And then 4th place in Supermart. That gives some real strong positions in some previous tournaments, and we'll get to see how they go as we enter this game.
Yep, both extremely strong players, and we are going to head into this. And we are going to see the 6-3 from Tizago, 6-3 from Bingo as well. We are back to their conventional TEC plays. Bingo is going to misdrop a T-piece, which is going to force some soft dropping, but they're going to get through that pretty quickly. Tizago's got a more rough misdrop to deal with, and Bingo finding their stride again. It's going to be pretty difficult for Tizago to make it out of here, maybe even alive.
Yeah, with all of that constant attack that Bingo just sent, Tizago had to use her zone there for a little bit, and getting down to the well, and now just gonna be on the back foot of zone as Bingo starts zone to send what they can.
But here's a reminder that it is phase 1, so despite being on the back foot, they already have their max charge back. It is very interesting decision if you want to try and pressure your advantage with zone in phase 1 and give your opponent time to react, or if you want to just keep sending that out of zone pressure and try and look for some tanks to find an extra kill shot and compound your pressure. Bingo chose the first part of that, and Tizago's going to be finishing their zone pretty soon.
Yeah, but this is very close, and I think if it weren't for the IHS that just couldn't work out there, that could have been at least 20. I think it could have been even 21 there, but a little hard at the top, but that's still a real nice 19, and now Tizago just has to downstack a bit to get through this and get back at Bingo with their clean board there.
Yeah, that was a very nice ulti from Tizzy, and we're gonna see a C-spin setup from Bingo, and Bingo is actually at really good pace. They have the max zone, they have the transition score, and they're gonna fire it off immediately, trying to give Tizago a little bit less time because, yeah, Tizago's gonna fire it alongside them, not trying to go slow down in pacing.
Yeah, both players getting the Perfectress already, and now Tizago gets one extra line there, the 19, that sends, that's 5 lines of not great garbage as we've already entered phase 3, but 5 lines is not very much in the grand scheme of things, and so we'll see how Bingo can get through those as well as sending back, but ooh, looks like Tizago could not get the pieces over in the right spot, and that last one was too high up that is outside the board, and as a result that caused lockout, ending the game.
Yeah, that lockout is always something to watch out for. It does not just apply to zone. If you try and do that and you're not in zone, you are just going to top out, and I think Tizago was just very flabbergasted by the fact they received an extra line that they weren't expecting. And Bingo's going to be setting up an STSD. Luckily, they don't get the 10% chance for the game to say no to it.
Yeah, but seeing how these players react, part of it might be that, like, in another game in the community, Tetrio, they've got, like, I've seen Tizago now do some fun spins that, like, Tetrio is now becoming real well known for, as they've implemented new rules allowing for all spin benefits, as well as you don't have lockout in Tetrio, and so maybe that might have played a little bit of a role of that previous game, but now both of the players entering into their zone in this. Bingo up there at 19 has the ability and gets the Ultimatress there with 56 attack, but Tizago's not too far behind and has an ulti of her own. That's 54, very close in terms of lines, but with Bingo's speed advantage coming out of that zone, that gave Tizago a few lines of garbage.
Luckily for Tizago, a lot of those lines were clean, but the following lines, because Bingo wasn't doing the most efficient plays trying to cheese up Tizago, I think, it is going to end up working out. Tizago's going to find the lower side of their board, and Bingo is in 6-3 pace, which is a very scary thing this late into the game. They are going to find the max zone. Both players at max zones. It's pretty much who decides to fire it first.
Yeah, and with Bingo having a clean up stack as well as not terrible lines, it'll come down to how he can play at the top of the zone here. Couldn't get too much out of that, gets 20 attack out of it, but now Tizago has all of that garbage that was sent up and could use that to get a 33 attack. sending a bit more back at Bingo.
That was pretty unfortunate. Those misdrops on Tizago's side prevented her from getting the higher zone clear. That probably would have kill shot Bingo looking at how many lines they had to receive, but that's gonna give Bingo some time to downstack. They have 3/4 of zone to work with. They're gonna be forced to use it. Tizago setting up a cut copy, setting up another float, trying to keep that efficiency and that out of zone pressure that's gonna maybe top out Bingo if Bingo can't find the attack that they need in this zone.
Yeah, and with the fact that all of that happened while Bingo was in zone means that now Tizago has a max zone, and with such a massive zone advantage and not terrible board position, that means that she can do a lot right now.
Yeah, she's got plenty of options. She is going to end up misdropping that S piece, only going to send a 29 over to Bingo. Bingo sees the zone chunks, but those misdrops, they're not going to be able to access all of their material. That is like a TST tower on top of an STSD for Tizago, absolutely styling for that final bit of the round, and we are going to see a tie game.
With that sweep being just completely canceled, we get to see both players starting off with 6-3 yet again, with Bingo adding in a couple bonus T-spins just to keep things interesting.
Yep, Bingo is going to take the T-spins first, even going to go ahead and fractal. Of course, we're going to see some efficiency over pacing here. It is very interesting to see how the players try to balance that out, because of course you could be as efficient as you are, but if you don't have that zone to back it up, it's not like it's going to do too much in the grand scheme of things. Those misdrops from Tizago are looking good. They're going to have to find some insane downstacks. Like they want to use all their material for this zone. Going to end up topping out early, and we're going to see Bingo also in a pretty rough spot, but they do have an easier access to the rest of their material. If they get a high zone clear here, then Tizago might be in trouble.
Yeah, and with the clean garbage though, Tizago now using a half zone at the very least to upstack her own board. And Bingo has the ulti, but Tizago with that Perfectress has enough attack, despite it being the half zone, to cancel out and even send garbage back to Bingo. But once again, Tizago's at the top of the board and without great pieces to get out of this.
Yeah, when you're this high in the board, you've got a lot of dependencies. You're pretty much at the mercy of your Q to survive, and that is going to force Tizago's zone. Nobody's really in phase 3 pacing just yet. Nobody's got that max zone at the 40k mark. Bingo is getting pretty close. Tizago, if she can't get a handle of these misdrops, might be in trouble from Bingo's compounding advantage.
Yeah, I think Bingo is handling like the change in DAS from PBT better than Tizago seems to have been doing so far today, because she's had a few what look to be like placing the piece a little early for the DAS, and it's kind of giving struggles, but gets the 66 curb triss.
What a solve from Tizago. You could see her spending all of her time looking to see if it was possible, realizes it's possible, recognizes it, and then just goes and slams it. She didn't even need to reach 60k there. It is just a one-shot. So that is what we were mentioning early. Like, these curb trisses really do make the difference when it comes to the amount of attack it sends at this level of play.
Yeah, like, there is a wild difference between 19, 20, and 21 lines in a zone. With a curb triss sending far more than the lower line clears, that it can just completely obliterate your opponent, especially if you're not expecting it. But now as we're entering this game, we see Tizago real high up, doesn't use the zone to get out of that, but now has a very clean garbage and max zone to work with this, whereas Bingo is trying to get some kind of TST tower, could not access the right pieces to set it up, and now has a little bit of self-made cheese to work through, as Tizago once again with an extremely clear board, looking for that curb triss solve and just does not get it in time.
Yeah, that was a very ballsy tank from Tizago, but she did recognize that she was allowed to do so without using zone, and with the misdrops that Bingo had, even though they had the very efficient start of a TST tower, they weren't able to execute it just because that height dependency didn't look too good with the pieces in their queue, and Tizago is going to confirm another point. As
we go off, Bingo with that TKI to start off the match, where Tizago stacking up. It looked like they were starting with a 6-3, but then aborted early on. Now with some misdrops, that just meant Bingo could take a real easy round there. You hate to see it.
Yeah, Tizago was looking for that survival opportunity, scanning all of their options, and realized that even with that kick over, Bingo just had too much pressure, and Bingo is going to try and close that gap even further, bringing this to a 3-2 game. Both players immediately just going to go to the bread and butter 6-3.
Yeah, 6-3 is real great at this level of play for its efficiency that you can get. Is Tizago now has a little bit of a setup that she's working through, but is able to get a T-spin nicely and clean through it all, and both players are entering their first zone of this round.
Yeah, Tizago is going to end up resolving all of the dependencies that she had, and Bingo is only going to end up sending 26, and versus Tizago's high clear, it's going to be a little bit scary. And she is going to find an insane 21 solve with the S spawn.
Flat S is not a very common way to see a curb twist solve, but boy did Tizago make that look seamless.
No,
and that was just too much attack to Bingo.
And yeah, Bingo was able to see the zone chunks, but they didn't have enough skims to actually charge their zone, and Tizago is going to expand that lead even further. We are going to see the 6-3 versus more efficient T-spins from Bingo. Truly a PPT staple to just play as efficiently as you can. Yeah,
with the line clear delay that we see in most modern games, playing efficiently comes into be an important part at times. But because TEC just kind of gets rid of that in the zone, we see fewer players taking advantage of the efficient plays in this. And so now we're getting to see how Bingo is going to use both advantages of efficient playing as well as the zone to stack up here real fast and have 19 sending 47 attack, but Tizago already at the top with her own board and trying to find yet another solve if possible.
Yeah, she just didn't have the pieces there, and because she spent so much time, Bingo is gonna have her on the back foot. She does have enough skims to find a quarter, but it doesn't look too good because Bingo is still sending, and that is what we were talking about when it comes to the efficiency versus like the speed and the damage output. You've really got to find a nice balance, and when it doesn't work out, you've got to be ready for that pivot.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that sometimes can just make a curb twist so hard to find. It's just that it takes a lot of time in certain scenarios to actually find the solve, that sometimes it doesn't pay off to do so, but Tizago shows that even if it takes a while to find a curb twist, if it's there, it pays off immensely.
Yes, it does, and we're gonna see Bingo trying to 6-3 on top of their guard, which is a very interesting strategy, especially when it's phase 1 and the well is just so clear. But of course, we gotta look at that efficiency. Gonna find that combo downstack, even going down to TSS. Oh, they're gonna use the combo lines. They're gonna use the combo damage to start zone rather than a back-to-back start, which is also another interesting play you don't see very often. Tizago not too far behind, actually pulling ahead in terms of the speed of zone, and they're gonna end first at 43 and 18.
And with that counter zone by Bingo, that sent a large enough attack back to Tizago that there's a bit of garbage there, but she's working through that wonderfully, and despite the fact we're in phase 2 now, the individual clears more or less determine where the zones are, and so it's been not terrible garbage for the players so far. It just comes down to a matter of can they get there in time.
Yeah, and Bingo ends up being forced to zone at an unfortunate time. Tizago recognizing this, going for the simul zone, which is usually a kill shot, but her score is looking a little low, so it might not transition. This might be a window that Bingo needs if it doesn't, but Bingo can barely see the zone chunks, so even with a half zone, it doesn't look like they're gonna have the best counter shot here.
Yeah, and with only just entering phase 3 now, this is Bingo's last phase 2 zone, and he has to get a lot out of it lest any very problematic thing happens. But Bingo gets through it, and with a little bit of a mess on Tizago's stack that I think was just a misdrop ending T-spin setup. That gave Bingo all of the life he needed.
Yeah, what happened there was Tizago had a very greedy DT setup, but had their piece falling down the 2-wide the wrong way, and you can only really get that if you're playing Tetris and you have the 1E, so that's definitely the multi-game aspect there, taking a toll on Tizago, but Tizago is going to be able to use a majority of the material here, making it all the way to 17 lines, sending 37 over to Bingo, who has a max zone of their own and can see the zone chunks.
Yeah, it's... These zone sends get to be monstrous numbers of lines, and you either gotta take them or break them down somehow. And so with the zone, Bingo does a good job of that, but again, we are in phase 3. The garbage is really messy, and it can come down to whoever gets a good solid zone out of this.
Yeah, and as we see, Bingo tried to go for a count of 4, but just didn't have the Q to match, try to find any line clears at all costs, but it just wasn't enough to offset the pressure that Tizago was sending, and she's going to expand her lead to 5-3.
Going into the next one, we get to see more 6-3 from Bingo, but a couple misdrops is slowing that down, and Tizago with the PC is just too much all of a sudden.
Yeah, taking PCs in this game is definitely a gambit. If it fails, your opponent gets their pace bolstered, but if it's successful, if we see a misdrop, then it can just be an early kill. And now, do we see a 6-3 for 6-3? We do from Bingo, but Tizago's going, if it's not broke, don't fix it, goes for another MS2, but unfortunately they do misdrop their IP, so they can't go and try another PC.
But as we get into more of this game, we're seeing, again, more of the very clean Phase 1 garbage, and Tizago taking advantage of that with an STSD for future Tetrises as well that can just remain clear, whereas Bingo is having some upstack here, but that unfortunate well placement just makes it a little bit harder to get some good zones out of.
Yeah, Tizago was trying to make the best of her 8-1 stack there, but Bingo's efficiency was just making it too uncomfortable for Tizago to try and find that trigger that she was looking for. Bingo is going to end the zone at 17 lines, but that's still 44 attack that was sent pretty quick over to Tizago. And Tizago, those misdrops afterwards is not looking good for the end of her zone.
Yeah, and with Tizago, or with Bingo's finish there, I think Tizago was just a little slow on her zone trigger, that it just ended up being a phase 2 zone, and that really put a pressure on her time-wise that gave Bingo all outside of the zone all of the attack needed to take another match.
Yeah, and we could see from Bingo's stats there, playing at 104 and 99, definitely well over a 90% efficiency there, so very nice APP. And Tizago's going to go for another MS2 PC, they're going to find it, but Bingo does have to cancel this time, they're not going to let themselves get hit by it again.
Yeah, with the clean garbage that the players have gotten now, Tizago has a little bit of a garbage-based lead here from that, but Bingo the first to get a max zone, and so if he can take advantage of this, it can be deadly, but Tizago also with that max zone and a beautiful stack in order to use it.
Yeah, both players actually had a really nice board state, and we're going to see the simultaneous trigger, so this is going to be a very interesting interaction. I don't see it being too insane with the difference is just because of how good both their zone starts are. Bingo not able to find the ulti because the ult spawns in the wrong column. Tizago's going to send 62, but this just means that Bingo has a bunch of clean. It's just a matter of if they're allowed to access it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things of Phase 2. Like, despite the garbage being messier in Phase 2, because the garbage location is mostly tethered to how many lines are sent at once, that gave Bingo some fantastic garbage to work through, and with all of that, the boards are basically even again as Bingo starts his next zone and Tizago is ready at any time for hers.
Bingo is zoning from the bottom, and that is a very scary maneuver because you just give your opponent so much time to rack up that pre-pressure, but with Bingo keeping that efficiency, really keeping the advantage of zoning from the bottom, that's going to be 53 and 18, decently efficient, and that is going to transition despite being on the lower side of score just because of how efficient the zone was. Tizago not too far behind in the zone pacing, gonna use some masterful IRS tech and send 60 over, and Bingo actually has an entire board's worth on their bar. Only a quarter to spare.
Yeah, and all of that messy phase 3 garbage along with just not the right pieces to get to it means that Bingo could not get out of that nicely, and giving Tizago the win for this matchup.
Yep, that's a set. Very well played by both players, but Tizago did end up adapting a little bit better with the 7-4 victory.